So I am Amanda Capps. I am coming to you from Northwest Arkansas. I live in Rogers, and I am a second generation homeschool mom. So I was homeschooled all the way through and graduated as a homeschool high schooler. And then I also homeschool my own children, of which there are 8. And I have my first graduate from this past year. She graduated in the spring. And then I have a 15, a 12, a 10, and a 7 that are currently schooling, and a 4, 2, and 1 that are coming up behind them. So our life is crazy busy and chaotic, but I also fit the criteria for this talk very, very well. And so I've worked for Demme Learning for the last 11 years as in many different roles, but my favorite has been customer support. So I may have talked with some of you on the phone or can look forward to providing support at some point in the future should you need it. But that is kind of me in a nutshell.
Hi, I'm Jody. I'm coming to you from Pennsylvania, and I have 6 children that I have homeschooled all the way through. I'm coming through it though. I'm at the tail end, as opposed to Amanda, who's in the thick of things. My oldest is 28, long since finished, graduated from college, and my youngest is 15. He's the only one left homeschooling. So there, I have a 13 age range, and we've homeschooled all the way through. 4 boys, 2 girls.
That's awesome. My name is Lisa Chimento. I'm a customer success consultant and a placement specialist here at Demme Learning. I've been with the company for 4.5 years full-time. Before that, I worked for about 11 years in the fair season conferences, homeschool conventions. I have homeschooled my 4 children for 25 years. They are all grown and graduated. We did kindergarten through graduation. My oldest is 32. Then I have a 30-year-old and a 26-year-old. And my youngest just turned 21 last month. So they are grown and flown, I like to say. But I miss them a lot, and I miss that time because it was a precious time.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, my name is Gretchen Rowe. I'm a placement specialist here at Demme Learning. I've been here for 7 years. My husband and I have 6 children as well. And like Jody, we're at the tail end of the game. The last one is a junior in high school. We've done it all. We've homeschooled, we've public schooled, we've private schooled, we've parochial schooled. And we've met every child's needs as they have presented themselves. So it's been a different adventure every year. And I like to say that we homeschooled 21 years, 1 year at a time. So it's my delight to have the opportunity to facilitate this conversation with all of this wisdom today, because, man, I'm telling you, these ladies are masters of it all. Let's get started here because, oh my goodness, we could talk about this stuff for days. So what I want to do is talk about in beginning the process. I'm going to hit Amanda up because Amanda is, as my German father used to say, mittendrin, in the middle of it all. So I want you to talk a little bit about how you use a calendar to help your kids stay on track and help you stay sane. I know that you have beautiful, luxurious hair and you haven't pulled it out yet. So explain to us how that works with a calendar, Amanda.
So a calendar is a really easy way to kind of have a centralized information center. So in our life, that is kind of the central hub that we operate off of. Now, I will say there are days and times where things get crazy or it may not get put on there. And that always is fun because there are times my husband and I look at each other and go, did we talk about, did we put this down? Like, what happened? But thankfully with this particular tool, it typically gives us a really good all in one spot to kind of see what's going on a daily and a weekly and a monthly basis. So it's a monthly calendar. It's a huge wall calendar that I got off of Amazon. It was not expensive. I use the, non-damaging sticky tabs to stick it up on the wall. And then I write down my shifts, my husband's shifts, anything that the kids have going on, whether that's vision therapy, co-op classes, tutoring. I mean, just whatever, it all gets put in. Each person has a color. So it's very easy to see at a glance who's doing what. So that has been something that has kind of evolved through using this on a regular basis, is color coding, because there are so many of us that if you put everything in the same color, it can kind of get lost in the mix. So that's a great one. And so yeah, that's kind of where we just kind of keep all the information and what's happening organized.
Yes. And so talking about what's happening, talking about all those things that we need to organize, Lisa, can you talk a little bit about limiting outside obligations? Because I know I'm the party child. I love a good time. So it's hard to do that. And I think you have some good wisdom.
Yeah, well, you can really max yourself out with one child. If you've got multiple children, you quickly determine that you need at least 6 more parents in the house to be able to do it all. So, you have to really think things through, and it might take a family meeting to get together and say, okay, guys, we have limitations. I'm one body with 2 hands and 2 feet and 2 ears and 2 eyes. I can do so much, and I can only be in one place at a time. And if you've got a father in the household, he's one person as well. So you've got to be able to have this conversation among all of you. When my kids were growing up, there's a decent spread. So we were doing different kinds of activities. So I had like a co-op that I was doing with my younger ones, but my older guys were already well into sports. And, some of those sports take a lot of time. Cross country was a quick thing, but if you're doing a track, you are there all day. If you are swimming, you are there all day at those meets. And so you have to be able to say, okay, what can we do? How much time do we have? And you may need to limit. At one point, I had to say to my kids, you can do one thing each. And if you are going to choose a sport, then it can't be a music lesson. You're going to have to decide what's important to you this year. And, year to year, it may be able to change. You can be flexible, but you've got to be able to be wise and have that conversation together and make decisions so that you're being fair to everyone.
Absolutely. And that does make a tremendous difference. Jody, you made an excellent observation when we met to plan this session about the simple life and the Amish experience. Can you share that with everyone today?
Sure. It almost made it sound like I personally used to be Amish. And while I do live in Lancaster County, I used to, I got to know some Amish people, but did not grow up Amish. But what I observed was their simplicity. And as I spoke to this one Amish mother, she said that's how they make their big families work, with simplicity. And as she said, we have the same meal every Sunday. We do the same things every day, and they don't have a lot of outside obligations. So I think we can take a lesson from that and keep things simple. I love that Amanda just got a simple calendar and she wrote on it. When I tried the calendar method, I decided I was going to get on the computer and I was going to color code it there. And then I was going to do all of this stuff. I took a simple idea and I complicated it. So, and I had to boil it back because it wasn't working. I couldn't get it together because it took hours to make my beautiful calendar. So I would say keep it simple. Whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is you're implementing, remember to keep it super simple. That's the KISS method, KISS, keep it super simple.
So now what I want to talk about is a little bit about academics. And I think that I often say this at homeschool conferences when I talk to parents, there's a difference between nice and necessary. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So Amanda, can you talk about what activities can count as school time? Because I think that will be really helpful.
So this is where, when you are maybe a little more structured in type A and OCD, that you struggle, or at least I do. I can own that. Being able to think outside the box and look for creative ways to count certain things for school is a phenomenal gift, and it can really help you not stress about getting all of the things academically done. So cooking can count because you're doing math and you're using fractions, and you may be doubling or tripling or maybe quadrupling, in my case, a recipe, if we're being honest. And those are great ways to get kids involved, be all together, and delegate age appropriate responsibilities to everyone who's helping out. Little kids can unload dishwashers. Little kids can set tables. They can be involved too. They can stir things. Have a step stool, make everybody aware that things get hot. But I mean, there's a lot that littles can do that are productive, but not a detraction, or you're not busy doing damage control during the activity because they're little and they want to get into stuff. I mean, because the reality is everybody wants to help for the most part. Sometimes you do get into those teenage years and it feels a little more eye-rolly and forced, but they still need to contribute. They still need to help. They still live there. And especially I have found with the younger they are, the more excited and willing they are to help. So if you can kind of bring them alongside and foster that enthusiasm in the right direction, it can make for a really fun experience.
Everybody learns to scramble eggs at my house when you turn 4. That is the big deal for your 4th birthday, is you come to the kitchen with mom and you learn how to scramble eggs. Let me offer you a tip from coming from the far end of the perspective of, I have 5 adult children who are college graduates who don't live with us. So my husband and I feel like we won the lottery as far as that's concerned, but all of them cook and they all cook really well. And let me tell you what, invest the time to teach your kids how to cook, because the return on that investment is phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing. Lisa, can you talk a little bit about planning school around meal times?
Yeah, this was a piece of wisdom that a veteran homeschool mom gave to me back when I was first starting, because I had 2 little boys. One was in 1st grade and one was like a K4 age. And I had a brand new baby. We had moved to a new state and I was lost. So there's another point for you. Join a homeschool support group. You get so many great ideas. But she shared with me that if you plan your school day around the meals, then you will be less likely to overrun the school time into mealtime. And then you start getting kids who my children used to call hangry. They are grumpy Italians when they get hungry. And boy, you don't want to be around that situation. And so it really helped, because I would get going with the school and just sort of lose the time. And then before you know it, everybody was starving and I wasn't prepared to serve them food yet because I hadn't made anything. So we changed it around and I planned my meal times and I set those meal times. And so then as the clock went on in our school day, I had an alarm and we would stop, a half hour or so before I knew I wanted to sit down and eat. And during that half hour, they would have to clean up their stuff and put it away. And one of them would help me set the table. And then I would have a little time to get that food together and on the table. And that really, the stress that took off of our day was amazing. We still got everything accomplished, but I didn't have hungry, stressed out, grouchy kids, and I wasn't stressed out. And it really worked out well.
And Jody, I know that when we were talking about this the other day, you mentioned something about not only just like meal schedules. You already said about planning the same thing to eat for the meal on Sunday and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about how that worked as far as decluttering and having only the materials you just needed to get the school day accomplished? And because I think most of us end up schooling at the kitchen table, whether we want to or not. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think we really need to have a system in place for organization, because if we're trying to teach amidst clutter, it's very distracting. And So that might mean getting rid of things, keeping your life simple. Do I need this? If not, get rid of it, because it's taking up your time, taking care of everything, every single book you have, every toy you have, every appliance you have. It is taking your time to take care of it, to put it away. The 30 pairs of shoes or whatever it might be. And you can enlist your kids' help with this, because learning how to organize is such a vital skill. And I think the kids think differently from us, and they can come up with some really great ideas that we might not think of. And so it's great to work as a team and say, okay, we need to organize our space. So let's take time to do that. What does that look like? Instead of just you organizing it and then expecting them to maintain your idea of organization, it's good to pull them in. And they really have some brilliant ideas as well. And, along those lines, I really feel like we are overall modeling for them how to do life. This isn't doing school. This is doing life. And so are we going to cram everything in and not make time for other things? Are we going to just plow through, get that work done, and not have fun and play too? Are we not going to teach them balance in life and organization and time management? And, we have to remember that we're modeling this.
I want you to talk a little bit about what you talked about the other day about creating the atmosphere of what is caught.
Yeah. So we do set the tone in our home, and and I confess that tone set wasn't always the best one. So I think we have to be mindful of that. Are we setting this like intense tone, and things have to get done and they have to be done a certain way? Are we setting a tone of sloth? Let's just do it another day, or I don't like that subject, let's not do that one. Or just noticing everything that's wrong instead of lifting up and noticing what they did right. What tone are we setting in the home? It will make a difference.
I think that's a really good observation, is catching kids doing things the right way is so much easier than catching them doing something wrong. But it's, we're kind of acculturated and programmed to look at what's not working, because as mothers, we think about the child playing with glitter and what that's going to mean in the cleanup. And so we have a beloved colleague named Sue Wachter who talks about break out the glitter, don't worry about it, they're only young ones. And she loves being the glitter grandma is what she calls herself. So I think, sometimes I wish I had been a little bit more flexible in saying, oh, who cares that the whole gallon of milk just exploded on the kitchen floor, instead of going, what? So, yeah. And so many of you ask questions about how do you keep the youngest one and the most distracted one occupied when you're trying to work with the other kids. Now, mind you, I spread my kids over 18 years because my husband and I kept forgetting what it was like to have somebody in diapers. And I didn't do what Amanda did. So I'd like Amanda to talk a little bit about how her family keeps the smallest people from causing chaos while she's working with the largest people.
So first of all, I would like to say it's mildly controlled chaos. I mean, I don't know that you can actually control toddlers. I think that's an oxymoron in a large way, but there are things we can certainly do to help keep them occupied and hopefully out of, everyone knows a quiet toddler, unless you're sitting there looking at them, is not a good situation 9 times out of 10. So what I tend to try and do is have specific activities or special toys or a special bin that they can use. If I'm working with older kids, they can have that at the table. They can play with that and it keeps them occupied. It's not something they get access to all the time, so it keeps it kind of exciting and new for them and keeps them engaged. a lot of times, if you have littles, they will nap. And nap time can be an incredible opportunity to have focused and undistracted time to work with older ones. That's a good time to pick the subject that maybe mom doesn't love the most or student doesn't love the most, because we kind of have to be able to focus and get it done. And so, the more things we can do to set that time period up for success, the better. As kids get older and maybe they're aging out of naps, my mom always instituted quiet time. I mean, every kid at a certain point, while, a big, noisy, happy family unit is a fantastic experience, everybody needs a little bit of separation and downtime sometimes. And especially when you have kids interacting, some kids personality wise get along better than others. And sometimes that can create a lot of conflict, and mom just needs a break from, so-and-so getting on to so-and-so about what they're not doing. And I will say, I mean, I never have to really keep tabs on anybody, because I have all of these informants all around me who are making sure that I know at all times what so-and-so is getting away with. So I just can tell you from personal experience that sometimes mom just needs a little break from that. And so quiet time is a great way to do that. They can look at books, they can have assigned reading. It can still be effective time, but it can be time where everybody has their own space, their own place, and a little bit of a chance to recharge.
Lisa, I know when we were talking about this, you talked about the differences that you found in finding unit study time and collective things that kids could do together. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a real lifesaver for me when I first started. And, homeschooling 30 years ago was what it is today. There weren't the curriculum options for everything. There weren't boxed sets. There were just a couple of major curriculum companies and a few little independents back then. And I was just getting my feet wet. And I bought like tons of books for this box set. And it was going to take all day, every day for two little boys. And it was just nuts. And that same wise veteran homeschool mom came to me and said, put those books away, go to the library, find a lot of great reading material and read to your kids. I'm going to do some sleuthing for you. And she handed me a Konos curriculum book, volume 1. Back then, that's all it was just a single book. And we began doing unit studies, and they were considered character unit studies, but you could do them any way you wanted. And they involved history and geography and science and great literature, beautiful reading lists that I got so much use out of. And we did all of those activities together. We took our own little field trips, apart from like our group field trips with our support group. We would do little field trips that had to do with these units we were working on, so that we could see and experience the things we had been reading and learning about. And that involved all of us, including the baby in the stroller. We could go and do those things. When she began getting a little bit older, she got more involved. And when we would do dress up types of things, we were, acting out scenes from some story or whatever. I, put something over her head, and she was so thrilled to be a part of it because she'd been watching her big brothers do it. So you're going to need to do math and reading and spelling separately according to the children's skill levels, but you can combine those kinds of subjects like social studies and science together, history, geography, different cultural things, even literature together. And that saves a lot of time because you don't have to do it individually with different children. You're doing it all together. They're all getting what they get out of it according to their own levels.
I think that's wise advice. And sometimes as parents, we think we have to meet every obligation for every child. I want to say to you that having graduated a bunch of children now, you need to look at your school schedule of who do you have the least amount of time left with. And you need to build your schedule around the oldest child. And I know as parents, as moms in particular, it's easy to look at the one who's just about ready to start reading, and we feel like that's where our obligation needs to be. But I'm here to tell you, the best invested time is with the child with whom you have the least amount of time left. You'd be amazed at what your child will pick up, what that younger child will pick up from the time that you invest with the older child. Jody, I know that you had talked about the difference between grace and slack, and I think this is such great advice. So can you offer a little bit of insight for our parents? We're about to the point where I want to open it up to questions, but I don't want to miss this because this was good stuff. So.
Okay, I'm not remembering exactly what I said in the meeting.
So I'll tell you what you said in our notes, just as a prompt, so I don't leave you out here going, what did she want me to know? You said there are differences between reasons and excuses, and be careful of the consequences you mete out for a child. And so I think that's very important.
Sure. Well, and I do think that as we go through, there are going to be seasons where we need to pull back. There are going to be seasons where we cannot do as much, and there'll be legitimate reasons. But to just pull back out of weariness, I just, you know, I don't like it type of thing. You know, we want to be careful why we're pulling back. We want to know that it's okay to pull back. There are seasons to pull back and maybe do less because you're focusing on a certain skill or because something's going on in your family. But I would just say be careful about that. And as far as the consequences, I had just been sharing that there have been times I would dole out a consequence that really ended up being a consequence for me. And where I had to, you know, I had to be over that child. It took more time to actually follow through with the consequence. And I thought, oh, note to self, make sure you dole out a consequence that doesn't require my every moment of overseeing this, because that did not help the situation at all. But I would say, as far as the slack goes, I did look up that word slack, and you know, it means to, just because we have this lazy, like, ooh, I don't want to be a slacker, you know, that's lazy. And slack means to decrease in intensity, quantity, and speed. And yeah, there are times we need to decrease in intensity, quantity, and speed.
Amanda's got a good question. What would be some incentives that you could offer to your children for task completion? Ladies, I'll leave that open to you all.
Well, you know, you guys, you know your children better than anybody on earth. You know the things that are important and precious and enjoyable to them. Those are the kinds of incentives that you can offer. If the incentives that you think that they want aren't the things that you would want to give, you can introduce them to some new things. One of my children, I couldn't get the books out of his hand. I actually had to like punish him for reading too much. It was kind of crazy. So, I mean, the opportunity for him to have new books was joyous for him. Not so with the other kids. Sometimes it can be time. You know, you can say, you can have this time alone to do such and such, or time out with your dad to have that time alone with him. You can think about the things that really make it worthwhile for them. So use that. You have secret knowledge, use it.
I think it's also wise to recognize that incentives are only valuable if you have them right out in front of you. So to say to a child, if we get through all of the school I've planned for the month of October, at the end of October, I'll do something special for you. Kids can't tell time. In fact, a lot of kids are very, the ADD term is time blind. So you have to get those incentives in there when they still connect the dots. Amanda, I know we've talked about this before. Can you talk a little bit about time blindness and what it's like to incentivize a kid who doesn't not manage?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that one's a fun one sometimes. Yeah, no, I definitely have kiddos that fall in that category. And so, I mean, I don't know what it is about you need to do this task, and suddenly they need to go to the bathroom, and they'll be in there for 30 minutes. And you're going, are you serious? Like, do we need to go to? So I remember one time I literally, this was happening habitually, and I was noticing this as a parent, and I'm like, what am I going to do? What is the creative way to handle this and not like make them feel super called out, but like let them know that I'm on to them, kind of a thing. And I ended up like banging on the bathroom door, and they come out, what's wrong? And I'm like, do we need to schedule a doctor's appointment? What are you talking about? Well, I've just noticed you're spending a lot of time in the bathroom. Like, are there any symptoms that you need to make me aware of? Are you okay? Like, do we need to go to the doctor and get this checked out? Because I mean, this isn't normal. Well, how long am I spending in there? Well, I've been tracking it now. And so you've been in the bathroom over 30 minutes multiple times this week. And it's usually right when I've asked you to wash the dishes or unload the dishwasher. And I'm starting to get really concerned. And she was just like, I'm fine. I don't need to go to the doctor. I'll go unload the dishwasher right now. And I mean, and she was just aware. And I made sure she was aware that I was aware, and on to what was going on. And it really, it devolved from there, and it was no longer a major issue. But I mean, I think sometimes kids think they're giving us the slip, and they just need to know they're not giving us the slip, that we're really onto them. I mean, I had these aspirations. I always wanted a big family, but like you see The Sound of Music and the Von Trapps and the Whistle, and you see Cheaper by the Dozen, and they're like engineers, and like they have everything like timed with stopwatches down to like how long it takes, which way is more efficient, buttoning up from the bottom or going down from the top. And I mean, I don't know about y'all, but that is not reality. It is just not. And so I think we have to be able to sometimes think outside the box, laugh at ourselves and our children, and not in a mean way, but I mean, just realize they're human, that the things that you tried to pull over on your parents are going to be revisited on you, and you better just enjoy it. And I tell my children all the time, comparison is a thief of joy. So don't compare yourselves amongst yourselves. Don't compare yourselves to other homeschool families and other people out there, because it's just ineffective and it steals your joy.
Absolutely. I wrote the word colonoscopy on an index card and slid it under the bathroom door to one of my kids and said, and he goes, what is this? And I said, what you're going to have if you don't get out of the bathroom.
Oh my.
That kid had a huge vocabulary. He knew exactly what I was talking about. So
I think it was helpful to learn.
So he survived. Sometimes our kids survive the things we do with them.
I think it was helpful to learn my kids' love languages and to talk to them about what would be a good incentive. They said things I was like, whoa, wow, really? Like that. So I think talking to your kids, having a conversation, let them in on it, because then you find out what really is important to them, and learn their love languages so that you can be speaking love to them. Because I know it seems like all of our kids like gifts, but for some, time is a lot more important, and for others it's physical touch. And so I think take time to get to know how you can communicate love to your child, and loop them in on this conversation of what would be a great incentive for getting this work done. And I was that child who went to the bathroom, when dishes had to be done. And my mom just simply said, and I honestly was just triggered. I really honestly had to go to the bathroom. I must have been on a schedule there or something. And but my mom just said, well, the dishes will be waiting for you. And no matter how long you stand there, the dishes will be waiting for you. So I didn't get out of the job, but it was there waiting for me.
Ladies, we've been asked a good question by Teresa. She says, how do you handle children having colds or illness? So they're a little sick, but they're not completely down and out. How do you adjust for that?
Yeah, Amanda offered some really nice ideas in the chat here too. I really like them. Read alouds. It's a wonderful time. And my kids never outgrew that. Even when they were much, much older, At college, they would come home for a break and I'd be reading aloud to the youngest one at home. They'd come from every room in the house, plop on the couch or a chair. And it was stories they had heard when they were young, but they loved hearing it again. They just they love hearing beautifully written work. So reading aloud during that time. I love what Amanda said here, poetry, making soup and eating it together, listening to audiobooks. Back then, I think Focus on the Family was doing Adventures in Odyssey at lunchtime. That was always a treat for us, that we could listen to that broadcast sometimes during our lunch. So you can do different things like that. There are lots of different opportunities. One other thing I wanted to sort of piggyback onto what Jody had said earlier was, you know, a lot of moms, homeschooling moms, are overachievers and they tend to do everything themselves. You need to bring your kids in on this stuff. They are capable. I read one of the best books ever when I first started homeschooling by Dr. Raymond and Dorothy Moore. They're both deceased now, but they were pioneers in homeschooling in America. And they wrote a book called The Successful Homeschool Family Handbook. And they said, if your children can walk, they can work. So get them in on the chores. When they were very little, I would have them start folding dish towels and handkerchiefs when the laundry came out, matching socks and things like that. But even with homeschool materials, they can help you. I read something once where a mom was talking about something with math and how she would go and highlight things in her son's math book so that he would not forget the steps. And I thought, why are you doing that? Let him do that. Give him the highlighter and tell him, go in and find these things, because now he's not going to miss them. If you highlight it for him, he hasn't learned. He hasn't learned to do for himself, but he also won't notice those things as well. Give your kids that opportunity. If you're making charts or things that are decorative, find those kids in your family that are artsy and love drawing and decorating, and let them make those posters for your schoolroom or whatever you're doing. Get your kids in there. You are teaching them how to teach themselves. You are teaching them to cooperate and contribute to your homeschooling family. And what they are doing will stick with them so much longer than if you had done it for them and they were just looking at it every day.
I think that's very good advice. Amanda said something earlier too about what do you do, you know, when you get the teenager. How did you put this, Amanda, with the rolling eyes and the pushback? There is something to be said for you as the parent to teach your children how to teach themselves. And, you know, one of the most valuable things of my Matthew C experiences was learning the teach back, because that teach back then bled over into so many other things. And when my daughters hit puberty and I started getting teach back about, you know, Jody said the dishes will be here waiting for you when you get out of the bathroom. We started timing tasks. We started seeing how long it really did take to empty the dishwasher. And it was amazing how much less pushback I got when we actually figured out that it did take less than 5 minutes to empty the dishwasher. And I proved it to them because we timed it over a whole week. We all emptied the dishwasher. Everybody got to do it. The kids thought it was a riot that it took Dad more time than anybody else because he didn't know where anything went. But you know, it was a learning experience. And I think our goal as homeschool moms is, one, we want to educate our children, but two, we want them to learn to take care of themselves. And that process is sometimes an exhausting one. We used to laugh at our house that we would say some of the days lasted forever, but the years did pass very swiftly. So good things to keep in mind. I have other questions here. I'm trying to catch up at the chat. What games do you love for reinforcing math for kids? And I know we've had a couple of conversations about this, so I'll throw that out here to you guys as far as games are concerned.
I see Amanda
oh,
put
go
in
ahead.
dice. That's a great idea. Yeah, you can throw dice and then you can have your kids do different things with the numbers that roll up. Ask them to add them, ask them to subtract or multiply or divide those numbers. They can, you know, and then see who can come up with the quickest way. a game of war with cards. When you're once they have learned the facts, and I will specify this. This is not how they can learn the facts. This is how they can review the facts after they have committed them to memory. You don't want to put speed or timed things on children who are still in the learning process, because nobody learns anything better that they don't know yet when you make them do it faster. That's just completely contrary to the rules of learning. So if they don't know it yet, throw away the clock and the timer. But once they've committed it to memory, then you can do those kinds of things. And playing a game of war with cards, and whoever can come up with the math fact first can grab the cards instead of whoever has the highest one.
Yeah, that's a good one. And honestly, you can go on Amazon and look up math games, and you will find a plethora of materials to choose from, and you can see, oh, what would my child like? What would, but certainly dice, cards, they're all good. And but some kids don't like the pressure of that, because it's a speed thing usually. So for some kids, that's not their idea of fun. And I would just stay tuned in to your child, because we don't want to stress them out here. We're trying to plan fun. We're trying to make it fun, and it might be anything but for them. So I know we like to play restaurant, and we would, have a, pretend menu my daughter would make up, and we'd have to add up, okay, what did we have for lunch? And we'd add up our check, and how much would we leave for a tip? And that was just kind of casual and fun and impromptu. It did not involve speed. When my kids were learning to count money, I always had spare change. I always saved my change. A lot of people do that. And I would take a handful and dump it. If they were just learning, it would be a small handful. But the deal was, if you can count it and it's correct the first time, you keep it. If not, it goes in the jar. And so we kept doing that until they had mastered counting coins. And then it was, okay, then the coins are being saved for something else. But they loved that when they got to, oh yeah, I'm on coin counting now, because they knew that they were going to be able to go shopping then at 5 and below or something like that. So that was fun too.
I always say that I used to take my kids, and we were a one-income family in the years that we homeschooled, so we didn't have a lot of luxuries as far as that's concerned. But every once in a while, we'd have a pizza night, and I'd take a kid with me to pick up the pizza because it was too cheap to pay for it to be delivered. And I would pull up a $20 bill and say, all right, the pizza is $18.70. I'm handing them a $20 bill. If you can tell me what the change is before he hands it back to me, you can keep the change. That's just practical math skills and being able to incentivize your children toward that end.
Amanda says, how do you plan a menu and do groceries? This is another great way to get your kids involved. My older daughters, one plans the menus, one does the shopping. And I cannot stress to you enough that there is no shame in spreading out that workload. If I tried to plan the homeschooling, plan the menus, plan the shopping, do the shopping, I mean, yes, maybe I have to facilitate driving and taking somebody somewhere. But there is so much that they can do and so much that they can be involved in that really contributes and really helps the family out. And I would say, after having gone on a road trip with my 2 oldest this weekend, we had some great time to talk in that car for 12 hours on the way up and on the way back. And it was so amazing to get some feedback. And some of it was very positive, and some of it was like, okay, I need to take that into consideration as I'm working with their younger siblings. And one of that was, make sure that even if you are delegating and they are working and contributing to the family, that you exude some gratitude and show them some thankfulness for that. Don't just expect it or have an attitude of this is just your part and your contribution. we love to be encouraged. We love to have things that we do appreciated and noticed, and so do our kids. And so while I have tried to do that in some ways, I think in some ways you get caught up in the busy, you get caught up in just the day to day, like Gretchen was saying. I mean, the days are long, but the years are short. That is legit. It is legit. And so it can be one of those things that in that long day, you can be a little tired, you can overlook maybe dishing out some praise or some encouragement where it is needed. And so look for those opportunities.
You know, one of the things that we did in my household as my kids got older is we had board meeting Fridays. So lunch on Friday was a not to be missed event. And the reason it was a not to be missed event is because that was where we got to have a conversation about what went really well this week. What did we find that was really terrific and you'd like repeated? Was it a meal? Was it a time? Was it an activity? Was it something that we did together? And then what could we improve on? What didn't go the way you wanted it to? And we really sought our kids' feedback on that. And the only thing I wish I had done is I wish I had started that sooner, because they had some really great wisdom. And one of my children suggested something that I still remember to this day. We didn't live in a very big house, but it kind of always ended up to be kind of a hot mess. And I couldn't figure out how it went from tidy to messy in a hot moment. So he suggested that we have zones for cleanup. And when dinner preparation started, there was a child designated to help with cooking. There was a child designated to help with table setting. And then the rest of the children were responsible to go find their zone and pick it up. They didn't have to clean it. They just had to find the stuff that was there and put it away. And you know what? That kid was 8 years old when he made that suggestion, and we used it for years. And now I only have one kid left in the house, and I can't give him the whole house as his own, but I'd sure like to, because it really did make a difference. So kids are always full of feedback. You know, Amanda's right. They're going to tell you how they feel. But if you solicit that feedback, how much more they will respect you in that process. So I think that makes a difference too. What else, ladies? What are we forgetting?
Well, I just want to jump in on that. I have heard someone talk about it in terms of glows and grows, and to, give me, 3 glows. What am I doing great at? How am I an awesome mom? Please tell me, I need to hear it. But how can I grow? And to glow and grow. And that's just a kind of a positive way to put it. And we can then in turn give them glows and grows too.
That's awesome. I love it. How about it, Amanda? What else? What good advice am I forgetting to ask you about?
Oh, goodness. I think the only thing that I would say at this point in homeschooling multiple kids is I specifically have a big heart because a couple of my kiddos have some learning challenges and they learn differently and they learn on a very different timeline. And so if I had the same expectations of those two as I did with my very naturally motivated, very naturally academic older two, it could really do some damage to our relationship and to just how we're approaching homeschooling as a whole. There are big things that happen in a large family. One of those being more babies, because obviously, if you're a big family, you're having babies. And so allowing yourself grace to work with kiddos with learning challenges, allowing yourself grace when you are pregnant and you are tired and you are having morning sickness or you are postpartum and you are trying to figure out, baby has sleep schedule flipped and you're not sleeping. Those are all things that can impact the tone of the environment, like Jody was talking about. They can impact the feeling of success for you as a parent. You can really feel like all I did today was get the kids fed and change diapers and nurse, and that's literally all I got done. And it can feel like, oh my goodness, I'm getting behind, or you can just really lay the pressure on yourself. And I would just encourage you, just don't. You're not doing yourself any favors. Your kiddos are going to pick up on your stress. Those are the days that it is good for everybody to stay in their jammies, to pull out a good read aloud, to watch a documentary on Netflix or Amazon or from the library or whatever. Don't try to overdo it. It's okay to have, paper products that you dispose of so that you're not spending a lot of time doing dishes. There are definite strategies that are helpful and that can save time in a large family dynamic that maybe you'll have to budget a little more for, but time is money too. And so you have to weigh what's more important here. Me standing at the dish or, standing at the counter washing dishes is going to cost me in time. Whereas a paper plate I can throw in the trash in 30 seconds and I don't have to wash it or scrape it or anything. So it's okay to have those times where you go, okay, what can I eliminate? What's a necessity, and giving yourself grace, and don't forget that mommy is important too. And if you're not operating from a place of rest and rejuvenation, and you're not doing some self-care for yourself, you're not doing anybody in your family any favors.
I think that's really good advice. Amanda has asked us a question here about what responsibilities we could give our husbands. And I will tell you, my husband's responsibilities were very limited. In the time that we were homeschooling 5 kids at home at one time, he was traveling 22 to 23 days a month. So his responsibilities were to come home, hug kids, and figure out how to enter back in. And it wasn't until I started traveling for Demme Learning that I realized how hard that really is. And I don't think I offered him enough grace in that period of time. So I think it depends. And I'll throw the floor open. Lisa, I know you had multiple moves in your homeschooling experiences. So what?
Yeah, it was different years. For one period of time, we were in South Florida where it's hot for, 9/10 of the year. And my husband worked nearby. So when he came home from work, it was, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening. It was still hot outside. And he would just round up all the kids and take them in the back into the pool. That was a break for me. And it was fun for them. It was a reward at the end of a day of work. And it was time with him. So most of the time that he contributed, it was in that kind of time of spending time with the kids, doing fun and interesting things with them, taking them different places. Sometimes we all went together, and sometimes that was my time off. For some families, the husband participates in the schooling if they are, willing to do that and have the opportunity. There is an understanding, though, that we have that because you're an expert in something doesn't mean you're a good teacher in that thing. So if your husband has an expertise, he needs to recognize that he's not teaching NASA scientists. He's teaching little kids who don't know it yet. And so that teaching needs to come from a place of that kind of understanding.
I just want to jump in and say, going back to comparisons, I forget what someone said, comparisons. Rob, I think Amanda said it, something that they steal our joy, but she said it more eloquently than that. Our saying around here is comparisons are odious. They stink. And I think we can compare husbands. I'll say it. We do. We hear that somebody's husband is taking on math and history or oh my gosh, they actually go to the co-op and they teach or something like that. Or they swoop in and they cook dinner. And I think we can compare. Our husbands are all different. Their jobs are different. Their time constraints are different. Their giftings are different. And we need to watch our mouths. We need to celebrate our husbands. We need to build them up around our children. We need to build them up when our husband is not present, when he is present. And I think you just need to have an honest conversation with him, like, hey, I'm unraveling. I had to have the unraveling conversation, I call it. I'm unraveling. And unless you want a wife in a jacket, a tight jacket, I need some kind of help here, throw me a lifeline. And
With buckles down the back, right?
yeah, our deal, yeah, right, exactly. This is one of the special jackets. And our deal was that I could at any time, like when he walked in the door, if I had had a rough day, we had one car. So when he got home, the car was there. And I could just say, tag, you're it. He would understand that meant something. He wasn't sure what. He would give me the keys and I would go and just have that time with the Lord, or, go catch up with a friend, something, go take a walk, something I needed. But yeah, honestly, just don't compare. Don't compare. Your husband is unique, and be thankful and grateful for what he does contribute, and celebrate him in his uniqueness. It will go a long way.
Ladies, it's been a very great pleasure to spend this time with you. And unfortunately, we're at the end of our hour together. And there's so many more questions that people would like to have answered, and we're at an end. So may I ask, ladies, briefly for each of you to offer some closing thoughts to the folks who have attended today. Amanda, I'll start with you.
Sure. I guess my biggest thought at the moment in closing would just be, it's so worth it. There is not a time or a day that has been bad enough that I would throw in the towel and go, this is the worst idea I ever had. There are days that do feel like eternity, and there are days that go by so fast and you wish you could slow the time down. And when you have kids on both ends of the one in diapers and one literally perching on the edge getting ready to fly, that is such a bittersweet and overwhelming set of emotions. And so I think the best word to describe it is you're always just in different periods of transition when you homeschool and when you have multiple children. And so transition is typically the part in labor that's not really the most fun. It's the most painful, and yet it brings the reward, and it's going to be short. So my encouragement would be to just lean into the transition, embrace the pain. It's short-lived, and sometimes the reward on the other side is just beyond anything you could even imagine.
Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with Amanda. It is worthwhile. It's hard work, but anything that's worthwhile is hard work. And you have an opportunity to spend time with your children that you would otherwise not have. And there's such a gain in that, not just for you, but for them. They are there when important things happen in life. They aren't missing it. They're not removed and isolated from it and disconnected. When a new baby is born, when a death happens in a family, when joyous things happen and when grievous things happen, they are there and you share them together, and they are being prepared for life, because those things will continue to occur in life as they grow into adults. And we don't want to isolate them from it. We want to be there, show them how to deal with it properly. And I'm so grateful for the time I have. I've made a lot of decisions in my life that I regret. This is one of those things that nobody could ever convince me to have done otherwise.
So good. So good what both of them said. I would say find something, I'll keep mine simple. Find something to celebrate every day. Find something you're thankful for.
I think that's terrific advice. And I have to tell you all, after spending this hour, I'm wishing Jody had been alongside me in my homeschooling journey. I think she'd have been able to take my fiery personality and back it down a little bit and help me find some joy, because you guys are all terrific. And I respect these ladies so much. It's a pleasure to be able to work with them, and it's a pleasure to be able to offer this service to you all. And I'm going to leave you all with a quote, because I have been pondering this. Ooh, I'm going to hope I'm getting through this quote without crying. I've been pondering this pretty much constantly for the last several weeks. A mother's job is to teach her children not to need her anymore. And the hardest part of that job is accepting success. You guys are on an incredible journey. Don't take it for granted. It will end much quicker than you think. Thank you all for being with us today. Join us again soon, and God bless you on your journey. Take care.